Hey, I'm Isabelle Tierney. I'm the creator of the Feel Good Life methodology, and catch me on this week's episode of the Jessie T Show. I love it. So my name is Isabelle Tierney, and I am the creator of what's called the Feel Good Life methodology. And on a very small scientific level, even though it's not that small, I help people relieve stress, get out of the stress response, and choose well-being instead. Right? But on a much larger, use the word cosmic level, what it really helps us do is to get out of our egoic separate selves and reconnect to what Dr. Andrew Weil calls the God response. So it's these 3 steps that actually connect you to every single thing you really long for and your soul really longs for. So it's incredible. Incredible.
Let's dive right in. What are the 3 steps and talk about the God response? Because I've tuned into the God frequency before through the help of plant medicine. So tell me what you do.
Yeah, it's God response. So the reason I came up with the word God response is actually Dr. Weil had called it that. So really, when you think scientifically, there's the stress response, right, which we go into as human beings when we perceive danger. It doesn't mean there is danger. When we perceive danger, and then we all know this, fight, flight, freeze. These days, people also talk about the fawn response as a 4th stress response. And when we are in the stress response, people know stress is bad for you, but nobody really, few people understand that in the stress response, we're wired for the negativity bias, literally to look for what's wrong in the world, because we're tracking to see, is there danger? I need to make sure that the bush, as I'm a cave woman walking down the path, isn't moving in a funny way, which means there might be a lion. So we are tracking always for what's wrong. Great as cave people, not so great when it's our partner, our children, our colleagues, our friends, right? The other thing that happens in the stress response is our rational thinking brain shuts down. So we literally can't think straight, and we will make impulsive decisions that will hurt us. So we want to get out of the stress response as soon as we notice we have it, right? And then we want to move to the relaxation response, which is the place where we feel safe, where we can trust, where we see the world from a unified lens, where we can make rational decisions. So the 3 steps are: step number 1, stop. If you notice you are in that stress response, stop. So think like a traffic light. Don't do anything, because whatever you're thinking and wanting to do is actually distorted. So don't do anything. Step number 2, unless you're in actual danger. I always say that to make sure. If you have a bear in front of you, then you better act from the stress response. Step number 2, yellow zone, right? Yellow light, slow down and breathe. Because research tells us, again, even though it's so freaking simplistic, that when we take 5 to 10 abdominal breaths, it is the fastest way to get your body to trust that you're safe and into the relaxation response. And then step number 3, we say go with a feel-good habit. And that's a habit that is actually scientifically proven to bring you into that relaxation response, into calm, into peace, into love, into joy. And then we have a list of like 100 feel-good habits we get to practice for that. And you have to be with that habit at least 30 seconds to a minute, because you're literally rewiring your brain as you do that and starting to teach it to do the positivity bias more than the negativity bias. So I've said a lot. I wasn't expecting in the first 3 minutes, but we can slow it down and break it down.
So where did you hear about this technique?
I created it.
All just created it by yourself? Was it did source, spirit, God give you insight? Like where did you download?
Everything I do. So the thing is that's weird when people like us who are led by spirit is like, all I ever say is God told me, spirit told me, source told me. And so sometimes it's like, Isabel, it's okay for you to say I. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because sometimes, I sound a little cray-cray, right? Like God told me. But that's the way that I work. For me, everything I do is I try to get out of the way and to let something bigger than me. I don't care what people call it. People can call it intuition, God, source, spirit, universe. I don't care, right? Buddha, Jesus. So when I say I will say it interchangeably, because I really actually mean it's spirit. I mean, it came from, I became a licensed therapist, moved to Boulder, and built my private practice in a year when it's almost impossible in Boulder to build a private practice that's successful, right? I was told that there's more therapists per capita in Boulder than anywhere else in the world.
I didn't know that.
Anywhere else. So I was told, you are never going to succeed. If you make $25,000 a year, you are lucky, right? And I was like, you told me I could curse. I was like, fuck you. You give me something, you tell me something like that, and I will prove you wrong. So within a year, I had full practice, 8 clients a day, 5 days a week. And, I lasted, I don't know, 4 or 5 years working that hard and having 3 kids and having a marriage. And then it all fell apart. I got diagnosed with adrenal exhaustion. Yep. And I got divorced, and it wasn't just that, but that was one of the contributing factors. Sure. And then I had to learn to find a way to be successful, to do work that I love, to do work that had impact, and to make enough money, or abundant money, actually, without living from the stress response, right? Without using adrenaline, without using push, without using doing, right? All the things so many of us have been taught to do, that's the only way to be successful. And so, I started learning about the stress response, and I created this feel-good scale that used to be called the stress scale. And so again, traffic light, think of it as a triangle. It is a triangle that has red, yellow, green, right? It's divided into 3. And the top, the red, is the stress response. We call it the red zone. The green zone is the relaxation response. And this work teaches you how to shift out of the red zone, down to the yellow zone, into the green zone. And we call it, in spiritual terms, the God zone, right? From God, Andrew Weil. And then I was like, well, so that's the God zone. What's the red zone? What's the stress response? And the word that immediately came was the separation response. Because do you know what happens in the stress response? The 2 sides of our brains are not connected, right and left. So literally, we can only see the world dualistically. Wow. Literally, we see things as separate, which to me is the very definition of when we come into this earth, egos get born, and we see ourselves as separate from something greater.